Okay, as promised, here is your video for the first day of my absence. All right, let's rock and roll with the English lesson. So, welcome to class. I do hope at this point each person has, well, if you're watching this video, you do have your device, don't you? All right, I hope you guys had a successful session in Lexia and you were working to close your individual literacy gap. All right. The objectives for today, the first one is I can compare and contrast the emancipation stories of Elizabeth Keckley and Frederick Douglass. And secondly, I can compare and contrast Keckley and Douglass's attitudes towards slavery. All right, some things you want to keep in mind here, concepts and definitions. First, keep in mind the historical context, okay? Slavery was still lawful and Blacks were treated very poorly. And emancipation means to free a person from a previous restraint. So in these narratives, we know that both Elizabeth Keckley and Frederick Douglass were both slaves. All right. And in these narratives, they tell us how they obtained their freedom. All right. So the first thing you're going to do is open your reading log and you're going to create a new page. I want you to create a Venn diagram that looks like this one. Feel free to write my answers on yours, but you have to add at least 2 to 3 more ideas in each section. So we know that we're looking at the emancipation story for Elizabeth Keckley and Frederick Douglass. So notice on the outsides of the Venn diagram, you are indicating the differences. And in the center where the circles overlap, you are indicating the similarities. So when I think about the emancipation story of Elizabeth Keckley, I know that she wanted to buy her and her son's freedom. So remember, she goes to her master to ask about that. And he does deny her at first. When I think about Frederick Douglass, I know that based on what we read, the first time he tried to escape, he was unsuccessful. And remember, he was beaten after that. Okay. Now, what's similar about these two freedom stories is that both of them had a desire to be free. Of course, there's more information to add in each section. So again, please add 2 to 3 more ideas. All right. Go ahead and pause the video to get that done. Once you finish, come on back. All right, so the next part of this assignment is to identify the attitudes about slavery. So we're going to compare and contrast how both Keckley and Douglass felt about slavery or the institution of slavery. So in this Venn diagram, I've added 2 details for you, and you need to add at least 2 more. All right, so let's look at the information I've already provided. So Elizabeth Keckley said that she saw the good and bad in slavery, and she also learned to be content as a slave. All right. As far as Frederick Douglass, he hated being enslaved, and he was always planning his escape. All right. Now, attitudes that overlap for both of them, both believed that slavery was unfair. And then secondly, both of them believe that slaves should rebel. And this is obviously the case based on their actions. All right. So please add at least 2 more ideas with regard to how they thought about slavery or what they believed about it. And that's going to show their attitude. Okay. Pause the video to get that done. Once you finish, come on back. All right, so now we're going to synthesize what you've completed or what you've understood about the assignments you've done up to this point. So this task says, compare and contrast the emancipation experiences of Elizabeth Keckley and Frederick Douglass. Be sure to describe each person's attitude towards slavery. Use evidence from the text only to support your ideas. I know some of you guys like to go online and find all kinds of answers, but I am only accepting details that are in the text that we read in our workbook. Okay? So use your Venn diagrams to help you write this. Please make sure you elaborate where necessary. Remember to include textual evidence. All right. Make sure you use our evidence starters as well as the connectors to make your answer make sense. This answer should be at least 2 paragraphs. Okay. Pause the video and get started. Once you finish, come back to wrap up. All right. Wrapping it up. The objectives for today were to, well, first, I can compare and contrast the emancipation stories of Elizabeth Keckley and Frederick Douglass. And finally, I can compare and contrast Keckley and Douglass's attitudes towards slavery. I do hope that you were successful with this assignment today, and I hope that you gave your personal best to be successful today. All right. Have a great day and have a safe evening. See you tomorrow.